Let's see. Share these links. Topic. Why Doge isn't about doing what to the budget, saving the budget, addressing national.
I don't know. I don't like that, but whatever.
Well, tell me something different.
Well, yeah, that's okay. I just think it's like, yeah, I guess it's a popular topic right now. It's just kind of boring to me. But,
You seem pretty excited about it yesterday when we were chatting about it.
we were chatting about a bunch of other things, not
Okay.
just those. We were chatting about Ian Ferguson, Luciferians taking over, everything changing. I guess Doge is part of that, but there's so much more to talk about, in my opinion, than Doge.
Okay, well, we're recording. No one's jumped on yet. You ready to go?
Hold on 1 second. You gotta be kidding me.
What's up?
I guess Julian's wants a press release today. That's fine. I guess it's later today. Whatever. Okay, yeah, let's go. Oh, sorry. Actually, I want to get some tea. 1 second.
Get some tea.
We're going live. Okay.
We're going live. Got 2 people popped on while we were waiting. And I'll just stop this music Remove from scene. Okay, this is Dylan Moore and Nima Majur of Irida TV, which you can check out at irida.tv, or you could find on YouTube. Just search Irida TV, IRIDA, space TV, and Rumble, Odyssey, BitChute, and basically every normal podcast source that Spotify. What's the iTunes, Apple podcast called?
Isn't it iTunes?
Okay, on iTunes, whatever. So, Nima, we were talking yesterday, and the absolute state of awesomeness is so awesome. I wasn't expecting it, and my hair is just completely blown back. The U.S. aid, which I didn't even know existed prior to this, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it existed. I didn't know what it did. And apparently it's the big slush fund apparatus for the, I hate using the term deep state, but I'll use it. Fine. For the deep state is now directly under attack by Trump, and it's in this, or the Trump administration, and which is in this like factory setting, assembly line, machine gun style of one thing after another coming out of this administration. And I was happy, obviously, that Trump went over Kamala, but I was not expecting this level of awesome to be happening. And it's so funny to me.
That's how that goes sometimes when
Yeah.
things usually don't happen the way you expect them. When 2016, everyone was expecting way more, and nothing happened, basically. And so everyone was kind of ready for a repeat of that bullshit.
A repeat of that bullshit, and then I guess really questioning, like, is A, Trump really want to change this, and does B, he really have the capability of changing it? Nima's sharing screen. What do you got here, Nima? No, remove from scene. Okay, here we go. Oh yeah, the United States Agency for International Aid. So, or for international development, aid, I guess, is the misnomer.
Yeah, it should be called U.S. AIDS, actually.
Well, and then this is one of the things that Elon Musk went after with his Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, and you and I were talking yesterday about when we look at the MMT aspect of Doge, right? Our first gut reaction is to say, hey, wait a minute, you don't actually want to stop the government spending because the private sector needs that private sector net savings. And as we've talked about on the show ad nauseum, we need more private sector net savings than we've actually been getting. There's actually a cash crunch in the economy that the economy actually needs more cash. And so the first reaction, I would say, from us is, hey, wait a minute, you don't necessarily want to do that. But the second kind of more stepped back version is, and if you could pull this up, that'd be great. The pie chart that you like, or I guess I like it too, of the federal spending is, if you look at the federal spending of the United States, there's four major categories. You got Social Security payments, you got Medicare and Medicaid payments, you got military, and then you got everything else. And all that, everything else is like 10% of the whole pie. And Donald Trump has been very clear. He's not going after Social Security. He's not going after Medicare, Medicaid. Clearly, he's not going after the military because he's the one who beefed it up last time around. So the only thing that could possibly be gone after is this 10%. So in a certain sense, it's kind of goofy to say, okay, we're going to create a Department of Government Efficiency so we can save a small chunk of 10%. Right, okay. Oh, is this the... Oh, this is Texas. You're in the Texas Census Institute. The U.S. Department of Agriculture gives a lot of money to Texas. Wow. Or is it? Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? Pull that up. Okay. Yeah, you've got 28% health, 25% Social Security. How much was defense? 29%. And then you've got a bunch of 1% here. Labor, science, energy, food, agriculture is a 3%. And then you got a 9.1% remainder, whatever that is. I'm guessing that's where USAID falls into. Does it make, like, from a grand scale things, you could say, okay, fine, we do want government efficiency. Forget about the MMT morons suggestion about the private sector net savings. What does it even matter in the grand scheme of things if so much of the budget is being spent on stuff that no one will ever touch? And I think what we're seeing right now is that this isn't really about the budget. These are not economic moves that are being made here. These are political moves being made here. If U.S. aid, apparently, this is what I've been told, and I mean, Disclosed.tv posted that Politico got, $8.1 million from U.S. aid at some point?
Way more. I think it was something like 32 million or so.
Some astronomical number. That this is, U.S. aid is supposedly the
Let's talk about
the
that.
slush money. The slush money. So that's a perfect example of U.S. aid. All this government money gets created out of nowhere, gets given to U.S. aid. It's this bureaucracy that is unbiased and isn't touched by the whoever's in charge and whoever people are voting for. We're high and above that, and we don't have anything to do with that. Therefore, we get to move money wherever we want, which can include getting politicians elected and funding media outlets.
Yeah, I thought there's actually a Zero Hedge article that I'm going to pull up because this is when I read this, I thought it was completely insane that this supposed private media is so state funded, basically. Okay, yeah, there was a Zero Hedge article that talks a little more about these numbers. Let me share that one. Boom. So there was, can you see it?
Zoom in twice. Yeah, much better.
Yeah. So it also mentions the New York Times, by the way. But so this guy here came up with 27 million to Politico.
And this is a guy that's digging into the archives of U.S. aid or something like that.
But yeah, by some counts, 32 million from various U.S. agencies during the Biden years. So Politico, the organization that fed us the story that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Putin's spy operation, that bullshit was fed to us by Politico primarily. That's the outlet to whom the Biden regime fed that story, and then they were the ones who disseminated the story. And we do indeed appear to be funneling large sums of tax money to Politico so that some bureaucrats can read left-wing journalists complain about Republicans. Yeah. I mean, this is so devastating. This is so incredibly embarrassing for the so-called respectable establishment media. And this guy also talks about, by the way, I didn't know Politico is owned by Axel Springer.
What's that?
It's a German media giant.
Yeah.
which ironically in Germany is actually known to be rather conservative because they own outlets like the Bild Zeitung, which is the national tabloid newspaper, I guess. So I guess they can just swing whatever way they see fit, whatever the strategy is, whatever the motivations are. But also, this was in 2021, so maybe they were
Well,
even more far left before that.
well, and I
God
want to
knows.
read the Zero Hedge tweet. So 90% of in quote subscribers to left-wing publications like Politico are fake and taxpayer funded, and then using fake subs to
Yeah,
artificially pump up revenue, Politico gets to sell itself to German propaganda giant Axel Springer
yeah.
for $1 billion.
Look at this. So there's something here where they explain that there is Politico has a Politico Pro subscription that costs $10,000 a year, and the U.S. government
Bought 37 of these contracts or something.
bought a bunch of those let's see where it says here
I
somewhere.
mean, this is so obviously corrupt money funneling.
No, this is
It's just embarrassing, like you said.
yeah, Politico has a subscription called Politico Pro, which costs around 10K a year. Um, and so I think they bought something like 50 subscriptions or something like that. Also, by the way, New York Times, BBC. So these are government agencies signing up for subscriptions.
So they can argue that we're not just giving them money, we're getting a service, we're paying for a service. Yeah, okay.
Well, it's it's a sweet gig for these outlets. They don't have to produce anything. They don't have to ship anything. They just have
Do we get
to
in on this?
yeah, they have to dish out their opinionated drivel, and the money just comes flowing in because the Biden administration decided so. So yeah, I mean this is a handout. And this is just so damning for the entire mainstream media, I think, because they always act like they're at least somewhat private, at least not outright publicly funded. But no, here are big sums of money shoveled their way from the federal government, just from one agency of the federal government, by the way, that is under observation or under scrutiny right now, if you will.
Well, and then I mean,
It just makes me think back, all these years, all this shit that's been told to us: Hunter Biden's laptop, Russian this,
COVID in
Russian that,
Syria, yeah.
COVID this, vaccine that. It's to a large extent just government funded propaganda, and not just that's not just hyperbole, not just through backdoor discussions and behind the scenes corruption, but outright money sent their way. I mean, especially this Politico Pro, $10,000 a year subscription. What a joke! I mean, who gets a Politico Pro subscription for
Well,
$10,000?
it's like the art world. That it's like Hunter Biden painting that art,
Yeah,
right? It's like, oh yeah, here's my $500 million fantastic art that I made. This is totally not a mafia money deal, right?
yeah. I mean, who gets a Politico subscription? You don't learn anything from Politico. They just give you the same left-wing propaganda that you can hear on CNN and MSDNC and whatnot. So who gives a shit? Like, obviously, it's a handout to this outlet.
Well, and then we're getting the comments here. Jesus, hey Jesus, is saying there is no left. The left hasn't existed since JFK. I'm glad you brought that up because as Nima's going through this, what's coming into my mind, Nima, do you remember in the Ultimate History Lesson, the interview with John Taylor Gatto, where John was telling a story about when he was in college, I believe it was. So, I mean, this guy died, what, 10 years ago now? He probably born in the 30s or the 20s or something. So when I say when he was in college, this is like in the 50s, that he had a roommate associated with this magazine called The Daily Worker, which is the, communist rag at the time, right? And that the roommate was saying, yeah, most of the subscriptions from the Daily Worker are fake. Like 90% of them are fake because they need to make it look like they're bigger than they actually are in order to get the information disseminated out there. And what we're seeing now, I mean, Politico 90% of the subscribers are fake, so they could bolster up and sell themselves off and get all these stupid contracts with the government. I mean, it's all just there's literally no real support for any of this stuff. It's all behind the scenes, oligarchic, klepto-technocrat, blah, whatever.
Yeah,
Stealing.
Here, 37 users in the
Yeah,
FDA.
it's just all fake. There's no actual real thing moving around. It's just fake stuff so we could steal tons and tons of money to use it against you. And
Yeah.
there's nothing new about this, but like the fact that this is I don't know if it's the only mechanism, if it's the prime mechanism, if we take this away, is the whole house of cards going to come crashing down? I don't know, but to see it in real time, excuse me, to have Elon Musk's team say, here it is, we found it, and then to have Trump's team turn around and say, okay, because you found it, we're killing it. It's so unreal to see that actually happen and not just be something you read about in a crazy conspiracy theory book that nobody believes. What a crazy time, Nima. What a crazy time. We got some comments here.
Okay.
Here, I forgot I can show these. Whoop. Here, let me remove this from scene. Let's go like this. So James Clemenson has a dumb question. When I write a check to the U.S. Treasury, the IRS, for my tax payment, is that check truly deposited, credited into an account, or simply destroyed or shredded?
It's if you write a check, it's deposited into a treasury bank. There are several banks across the country that initially receive that check, and then it goes to the Treasury General account, which is a Treasury's account at the Fed. If you pay in cash, then yeah, the dollar bills will actually just get shredded and replaced. If they're old bills, they'll just get shredded. But so this is just I'm just giving you the literal mechanism of what happens. But for all practical purposes, the money disappears from any relevant existence in the economy. So you could say that it gets deleted from the economy. I was just giving you sort of the exact technical mechanism of what happens. But then again, just to be clear, it's not like that money that is deposited in the Treasury account entitles the Treasury to spend the money. What entitles the Treasury to spend the money is a congressional bill that appropriates the money. So the Treasury doesn't need your tax dollars to spend money. The Treasury needs Congress to vote on a bill in order to spend money, basically.
And then just to maybe try to answer the question that's not maybe specifically being asked here, imagine the scoreboard at the ball game, right?
Yeah.
And let's say for some reason that scoreboard actually required pieces of paper to be run around the field in order to put pieces of paper on the scoreboard to keep track of the score, or to hand them out to the team or whatever. Yes, there would actually be pieces of paper moving around. However, if the people keeping score can just create the paper whenever they want, the fact that somebody ran over to them to hand them some papers so they can continue keeping score doesn't affect their ability to keep score or not. All they did was take the papers out of the hands of whoever else was using them. That was a total mixed metaphor, and that was terrible. I'm sorry. But
how about just think of any scoreboard in any stadium when the numbers go up, Does the stadium run out of numbers? Does the stadium need to get the numbers somewhere? Of course not. He's asking more here,
Yeah.
and only be destroyed trade, and only be checking account. Only the checking account is debited. There's no crediting on the side of the coin. Tax revenue. So he has a quote here. Tax revenue is somewhat of a misnomer, just an accounting term misappropriated by sovereign countries. And tax revenue is really the amount of dollars that have been destroyed from existence. Yeah, that is really what it is. It's so if you want to be coherent in economics, in your economic decisions, and you want to evaluate economic policy, where's the money flowing, how much money is coming in, am I bullish or bearish on the markets, am I bullish or bearish on gold, crypto, and whatnot. If you want a practical application of economics rather than theoretical masturbation sessions, then that's exactly the way to look at it. It's money that's taken out from existence, and it doesn't go back into existence unless the government spends the money. But the money going into the treasury account does not entitle the government to spend that money. That's what I'm trying to convey
Right.
here.
Even though there's some sort of technical apparatus where something actually gets deposited, that doesn't affect the the MMT story of congressional act is required to spend the money, and Congress isn't be held to whatever is deposited in that account.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, we're kind of in a situation right now where the treasury is, because there's no real budget, I guess, or maybe they have a temporary budget solution. I guess they do actually, but then again in March I think it's coming up again. But they are, whenever they don't actually have the money, they just create the money anyways, and assume that it's all gonna the budgets are gonna be approved down the road and it's all gonna work out. Wonderful answer, thank you. Right, and the spending is completely independent of tax revenue. Yes, it is. It's because it's tax revenue is somebody writing a check to the treasury. Spending is a congressman writing words on a piece of paper. Those are completely different operations. And then Congress voting on it. Completely independent operations. One doesn't look to the other and vice versa. Right? The congressmen who vote on a bill, or the treasury, the federal government spending appropriated money doesn't have to wait for your tax check to clear.
In fact, isn't it the other way around? The typically the spending has to happen first before the tax check
Yeah, the
clears.
money.
Yeah.
Where's the money come from? Right? What's on the dollar bill? What's on the $100 bills? It's just all, they're created by the government. They have to be spent into existence first, and then they are taxed out of existence later, which gives the money value. There's a I guess you could say, I don't know, there's a primordial demand for that money, which is tax liability. Fiat functions like a car or a bike. From Jesus again. Fiat functions like a car or a bike. The accelerator and brake are separate. No believes you have to pump. No one believes you have to pump the brake to gain the ability to accelerate. You just
That's a good
accelerate.
metaphor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and brakes are taxed. They slow, exactly. Or also, what's the good one that you've done from time to time, right? Is the bathtub. You have a faucet where water comes in, and you have a
Mm-hmm.
drain where water flows out. Faucet is the spending. The drain is the taxation. Jared Bernstein, finding the money Elon, the country's going bankrupt, taxpayer money. Jared Bernstein, I don't know what that means, but yeah.
I'm guessing he's referring to people who are constantly freaking out. Where are we going to get the money? The country's going to go bankrupt. Ah,
Right.
ah. What?
Right.
And
So there's some really bad economic illiteracy going on right now with that kind of stuff for sure.
well, and then
Um,
Doge is and isn't playing into it. That's the point I tried to make at the beginning here. Is I don't know if Elon actually believes that he's trying to solve the budget or whatever, right? But it's very clear to me at this point that these moves are way more political from Doge than they are economic.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, just to be clear, and we said this all the time whenever we talk about MMT. Uh, when we make economic assessments and we talk about deficits good, surplus is bad, that is from an economic perspective. That is from the perspective of, do we have enough money in the system for the economy to not crash? In other words, for you to be able to continue earning money, to be able to continue to afford things like houses and goods and services. We're not saying that, and this is where a lot of MMTers go off the rails, right? We're not saying that all these programs are necessarily should have to be maintained. And in fact, a lot of this money is spent on incredibly stupid stuff and incredibly harmful stuff. So we saw, like we just saw, for example, all this money is spent on infantile mainstream propaganda to convince people to inject a vaccine that's lethal and or crippling and or whatever other god awful effects we'll see in the future, and to yell at people who don't wear masks at the stores. All this propaganda that we've been reading, this is not good. Just because somebody earned money from it, that doesn't mean
Right.
that it should be done. Now, but on the other hand, though, you have to keep in mind, even if the money is spent on something stupid, the person who earns money for producing something stupid, they will come to your store and spend money there one day, right? So the money circulates through the economy. So um, w- my main
On one
point, I
hand,
guess,
stupid spending is preferable to austerity. I think
yes,
is what you're getting at. On one hand, stupid spending is preferable to austerity, but on the other hand, like we're seeing with this U.S. aid and this political example, sometimes the spending is so fucking stupid. Like, forget, just stop it.
yeah, and
Right?
also, so the ideally the MMT position on that would be, ideally, just cut the taxes accordingly. Whatever spending you cut, offer some tax relief to the population to keep the money flow neutral, and or even maybe even improving.
Right.
Um, to that, I actually just tweeted something on our Irida account. If you're logged in by any chance, you can pull it up, because I'm not logged in on this computer.
Yes, Irida.
Why am I not logged?
This is the Politico. New York Times
Mm,
pops out by millions of dollars, or did you retweet something or
yeah, no,
reply to something?
no, it was a reply. Look in the replies.
About the bond market real stuff. Here, let me just share the screen.
Just share it.
Let's see. I'll share my screen.
Yeah, zoom in on that. Yeah, so maybe so okay, first of all, these guys are suggesting that, oh, Elon, when the bond market realizes we are 100% serious about cutting spending and balancing the budget, rates go down and families immediately benefit from lower interest on credit cards. Absolutely not. That's not how this works. There's no such mechanism. It's something he's making up. There's no correlation between government budgets and interest rates. There is a correlation between interest rates and interest rates, right? Because the interest rates depend on the Federal Reserve's policy rate. The
Which
mortgage
is a
rates,
political choice.
which is a
Yes.
political choice by the Fed, the mortgage rates, the credit card rates, they all consist of a base rate and a premium. Base rate is the risk-free rate. The premium is the risk consideration. So obviously, if credit card used for spending is a higher risk premium, mortgage is almost completely collateralized by real estate, so lower risk. So what would lower the rates on all these things would be if the Federal Reserve cut the rate to 0%, for example, or to any lower amount. But I'm just giving you a stark example. The Fed could cut the rate to zero in their next meeting, and all these rates would come down immediately, and the federal government could run even larger and larger budget deficits. This rate would not change. The rate is a political decision by the Federal Reserve, and a lot of people talk around that. And this guy thinks that it's a budget that somehow.
Yeah, let me read this through just to dissect it a little more clearly here. So this is some guy named Brad. He says, Elon, when the bond market realizes that we are 100% serious about cutting spending and balancing the budgets, rates go down. And he doesn't explain why.
Well, I can tell you what he would say. He would say,
what would he say?
Because now the federal government's finances are more sound, and the lenders who lend money to the government have more confidence in the federal government's ability to pay the interest on these bonds. Right?
Oh, that's right. Because the bond is about actually borrowing money.
Right.
And we're worried that the government's going to default if they don't get their budget under control. And once they get their budget under control, there's no reason to have a high interest rate because you don't need to do that in order to attract people. Yeah, right.
So one good example is the Japanese government, which I think it had there's like 1.9 quadrillion yen in public debt, and the interest rate is like 0.5% or so. So
yes.
No, there's no such correlation. It's made up. And now the worst thing about this thing here that I want to point out here is what he imagines the base case for balancing the budget in 2029 is. So you can see here how he actually is promoting tax hikes to record high levels of taxation on the
This
population.
is the Millet approach.
Yeah. Well, we don't. I don't know if Millet raised taxes.
Well, I did he raise them or did he just make sure that they didn't go down? Whatever the case was, he was trying to balance the budget by keeping the taxes high and cutting the spending. Is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I'm hoping that there's going to be some tax cuts. But so this is if this proposal, I don't know who made this base case. Fortunately, it's just some random organization musing about this. It says their altimeter on the bottom right, or what does it say there? I don't know. So it's not official policy, because when I saw this, I was thinking, oh my god, if somebody really wants to do this, that means tax hikes. On top of that, spending cuts that are pretty substantial up there, as you can see. So that reduces the private sector's income significantly without corresponding relief in the form of tax cuts. And that would bring us on a path towards the situation that we were facing towards the end of the 90s, where the federal government began balancing the budget, and the private sector started going into enormous amounts of debt. And that culminated in the mortgage crisis of 2008. That was a peak of our private sector indebtedness. And by that, I mean debt to income. Since then, it's been coming down, and it has been at it's sort of leveled out at a pretty low level for a while, which is generally a good thing, because this means that, let's say we start going down this austerity path, there may be some runway for a while for the private sector to continue spending, corporations to continue earning. But on the downside, it would start to be more based on private indebtedness, and that would ultimately lead to some kind of debt crisis, potentially, depending on the amounts that we're talking about.
Right. Now, I don't think
Meanwhile,
we're going to get there. I don't think it's good. Go ahead.
yeah. On the other hand, if government deficits are large, private indebtedness actually goes down generally, and that's also part of the reason why I think private sector leverage has remained so low over the past couple of years.
Well, let's I think this topic is a good way to start moving and talking about sectoral balances in the sense of let's talk about some tariffs because we're when we were going into the 2024 election. Obviously, there was this big talk on tariffs, and Trump was making this big talk about we're going to collect so much money from all these tariffs, right? We're going to have the External Revenue Service because we're going to be collecting so much money from them, and we won't need the Internal Revenue Service anymore. And a lot of people were going, that doesn't make any sense. You're not going to make enough money in order to do that. And, you know, like we talked about in our last show, like, here's the 40 million different pieces of academic papers showing why these tariffs are a bad idea. And I mean, what did we find out in 5 minutes? It was a political move, not an economic one, because everybody's backing down, right? I mean, I think it's just delicious to watch.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just if you want to be effective in politics, you can talk all day long, you can complain all day long, you can do what the first Trump administration basically did for the most part. But the US is a huge importer in the world. It's a huge suction mechanism on the resources of the world. So a lot of businesses in other countries are dependent on US consumers and producers buying stuff from them. And so, by virtue of that, the government in the US has big economic leverage on all these countries because, like Canada, something like 70% of its exports, was that
Yeah.
to the
I've
US,
my
Mexico?
understanding is each Canadian province is more connected economically to the states below it than they are with each other.
Yeah.
So, in a
Well,
certain sense, it kind of already is the 51st state.
yeah, no, I mean, Canada is the US's largest trading partner, as far as I'm aware. Last time I checked, at least. So yeah, there were two economies that are very integrated, but the U.S. economy is huge. The Canadian economy is tiny, so they depend on us. And so you can tell them all day long to fortify the border in Mexico, for example, and they will laugh at us. Ah, yeah, whatever, okay. And you can cut off their means of subsistence or threaten that, and suddenly they can do all these things. Amazing,
Right,
right?
right. Well, and then it shows again going back. We said, Doge. The part of the sales pitch was, "Hey, we're gonna address the budget." I've already said. I mean, mathematically, it doesn't even come close to addressing the budget for reasons that we just discussed, and it appears to be more political than anything. Well, same thing I'm noticing with these tariffs is that first off, Trump wants the border situation cleared up, but he also wants these other countries to start buying stuff from the U.S. Now, I got two MMT sides of things here because we're getting a bad deal because we got more money going out than what the money's coming in. Well, from an MMT perspective, that's not necessarily a bad thing because we're creating money out of nothing and sending it over there, and we're getting actual real goods and services back, right? But on the flip side, if we're tackling with the fact that people don't understand the spending and the taxation, and we have to have enough private sector net savings, if the trade balance is able to be adjusted where more money is coming back into the United States, are you following me here, Nima? That would also increase the private sector net savings.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
If our current account deficit is reduced, then that could offset other cuts to private sector income, such as federal government spending cuts, for example, because the foreign sector's deficit is the domestic private sector's surplus.
right. Well, and then that also makes me wonder because again, if we take a step back from the economic situation and look at the national security situation, there is a level of national security to be able to say, hey, we need to be able to build our own stuff.
Yeah, not just yeah. So it goes even deeper than that. Actually, I was wondering if I want to show the chart of private sector leverage that we have, but um, you know, why do I go to the gym? Why do I train? Why do I go through the pain of going to the gym, Dylan? Can you answer that
Yeah, because you
question?
want to be the sexiest man alive.
Exactly. Am I going to be the sexiest man alive if I import a bunch of potato chip bags and Netflix subscriptions, sit on my couch, and enjoy all these amazing goods and services that the economy offers?
Well,
Of
you
course
could go
not.
woke and convince yourself that you are.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of that? That might be
No.
a good idea.
No, I've seen the
No, the answer
results.
is no. Right.
So, and this is something that Alexander Hamilton supposedly also talked about. Uh, Somebody who talked about it years ago on a podcast. You may have heard it. I think it may have been the Peace Revolution podcast or whatever. But Alexander Hamilton made the point we want to keep manufacturing in the US because the purpose of the economy is to keep our minds sharp, is to invent things, is to get more and more inventive, is to improve and think and think and think all the time. It's not to go shopping. It's a totally different views on the purpose of the economy, right? And the US, I guess, economic class has gotten used to this notion that the economy is all about shopping.
It's there to serve you like you're God,
Yeah,
basically.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Whatever it is, the thing that you want, you're supposed to get it, and the free market's supposed to get it there for you. And if anything interferes with the free market, that's basically an affront to God,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I think that's important to keep in mind. We don't want to. We don't only have an economy to go shopping. We have an economy to keep our minds sharp, to um, live a life with purpose. I guess to some extent. I
It,
don't know.
yeah, I agree with you, and I think it's also worth pointing out we have the resources here,
Yeah.
right?
You're right.
It's not like we're some Japan or something that doesn't have its own oil, or it can't grow
Right.
enough of its own food, or whatever.
Yeah.
We have everything that we need. Not everything, but in terms of the basics, we have everything. And
Pretty much.
this idea that we need to mollycoddle all these little countries all over the earth because they might get mad and stop sending us their coffee from Colombia or
Yeah.
whatever, as if the whole rest of the world doesn't make fucking coffee,
Yeah,
right?
Chuck Schumer held a speech and held up an avocado. Apparently, this avocado is gonna get more expensive because it's okay. So, we impose a selective corporate tax on some goods and services in this economy. And it is the greatest disaster that the Democrat Senate Majority Leader has ever seen in the realm of economics. It is so bad. But do Democrats ever talk about a universal corporate tax applied to all corporations in the country?
Yeah,
So
they when they talk about it, they want it to go up, right?
they raised them under Biden. They constantly argue for higher taxes on corporations. So the corporate tax is probably one of the most inflationary taxes in the country. Nobody ever talks about it in the corporate media. Nobody gives a shit. But we impose some selective tax on some product, potentially temporarily. And oh my God, the prices are going to go up. Don't you know it? The people who didn't give a shit about inflation for 4 years, oh my God, prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And then
What a
this
joke.
avocado specifically, right? Yeah. No. I mean, it just gets. It's like this super short knee jerk reaction. Like, if you put the tariff for 25%, this dollar is going to cost $1.25. Ah! Like, well, what happened when we did it? Oh, nothing. Oh, that's interesting. They buckled immediately because we had all the leverage. Like we know that we have all the leverage the whole fucking time. I mean, going back to Chuck Schumer, I mean, it's hilarious how big of a tantrum they're throwing, and I think this might be a good time to start talking some crazy demonic topics that we've discussed on the show before.
Oh
Which
yeah.
we've got to give credit to a guy named Ian Ferguson. I don't even remember when we did the first show with him.
I think it was September 23.
23, right? So this guy, self-proclaimed astrologer. So you know you're starting with something good right there, right? Self-proclaimed astrologer comes on and basically says, "Okay, guys, there is a team Illuminati overlord." He didn't. That's my language, not his, right? But there's kind of two of them, and one's worse than the other. And the one that's really, really bad has been in control for a long time, and he's about to lose to the one that's not as bad. And me and Nima are like, what? And the argument that he makes is, I mean, let me sharing something here. I'll get into the specifics here. Yeah, it talks about Lucifer and Moloch. But before I talk about Lucifer and Moloch, is the sense that there's these two teams vying for power, and Ian predicted that basically, I don't think he specifically said that 2024 Trump is going to win. He was more specific in the fact that Team Lucifer was about to get the upper hand over Team Moloch.
I think it's fair to say that everything he said would imply that Trump would win in 2024.
Fair point. Fair point. So he was saying that essentially Team Moloch is like Moloch from the Old Testament, right? This is the demon that you worship by throwing babies onto fires in front of, right? This is the entity that is obsessed with pure control, disabling your free will, total fear, total enslavement, absolute torture, absolute molestation of children, everything totally bad that you could possibly think of, right? When you compare that to what he said is Lucifer, and he says, okay, you know, in the biblical narrative, people confuse that these two are the same beings. I mean, have your opinion on that or not, whatever. But Lucifer is more about free speech, meritocracy. They're still the Luciferian idea is still cutthroat. It still wants to fight, but it'll still cheat, but it appreciates you cheating too. Right? Oh, you're gonna cheat. Okay, let's play at this game. I'm ready to go. Right? Whereas the Molochian idea is nobody competes with me. I dominate everything all the time, and nobody can even think to move against me. And he started giving examples. He said, okay, you know, a Molochian example would be like Klaus Schwab or Bill Gates or the Clinton apparatus or the Bush's apparatus. That sort of level of like dominate and control and molest everything. And examples of the Luciferian extraction would be Donald Trump or RFK Jr. or Tulsi Gabbard or who am I missing? Peter Thiel. These sort of guys where it's like you don't necessarily want to trust these people.
You're not going to share my screen?
Oh. You don't necessarily want to trust these people, but they're a whole heck of a lot better than
so
throw your babies on the fire in front of the statue.
Yeah, I think it's some people might have a problem with Ian Ferguson's declaration. These are the Molochians, these are the Luciferians, because these are rather loose descriptors for groups that are not necessarily coherent groups. But the reason why it struck a chord with us is that it so perfectly reflects the different spiritual motivations of the different factions that we're
Yes.
observing right now. And also, it resolves some of the confusion that some people have, because there are people who say, "Oh, Trump and Putin, they're all evil too. They're all of the devil too," and they're all just one cabal. And Musk is also part of it because a neural link. Also, people like to jump to conclusions very quickly. Find one thing and immediately throw out the baby with the bathwater, kind of thing. So Molochians are self-loathing. Very important is a very important Molochian feature. Stasis, swamp, um, and completely against competition and all that. They just want to dominate, and if they can't dominate, they'd rather blow it all up. Luciferians have some overlaps with the Molochians, but they also have characteristics such as, so for example, narcissism is also they're narcissists, but they're competitive. They are inventive. They are builders. Kind a little bit, maybe if you're Gnostic or the Gnosticism, the image of the demiurge, a little bit. He's a builder. Um, so then there's the next circle in these overlaps is the Most High, which is represented by figures like Jesus Christ. They have some overlaps with the Luciferians, but they also have their own much more virtuous attributes, of course. But so Ian was telling us, yeah, what I see happening is that there's a new elite slowly taking over, and they have been the builders of the Moloch. And also, of course, he goes back to astrology and Vedic cycles, such as the Kali Yuga, which is the worst time in the cycle of the low human psychology or human consciousness. Public consciousness goes through the cycle, and I'm not even saying that I'm not a Vedic Hindu, whatever.
Right.
I'm just saying, okay, I observed that there's things happening, and it happens to be explained by this theory. Okay, so we have entered, according to Ian Ferguson's, the past thousands of years, we went through the lowest stages of human consciousness. And does that sound crazy to me? Not necessarily. If you look at the world over the past couple of thousands of years of destruction, warfare, etc., etc.
Yeah, just read about the axial age if you want any confirmation of that.
Yeah,
And
I
how
mean,
horrible it was back then. Yes.
and we could even go back as far as the pre-biblical days. The Canaanite gods and the
Right.
things people did, and the gods people worship. So we are now descending out of this lowest form of consciousness and entering a new age. And when that happens, Ian Ferguson said that, or while as this is happening, the public consciousness is ready for a new elite that promotes different um, attitudes and characteristics. Molochians were stasis, self-loathing, and all this stuff. But the Molochians, they are very dull and dumb too. They're very evil, and they're kind of like, maybe if you think of Sopranos, Tony Soprano, the mafia organization. They are very evil and very ruthless, and that can be an asset in the world, right?
Hey,
If
Nima, real quick, keep talking. I got something I got to take care of right outside. Just keep rolling. I'll be right back.
yeah, um, I was talking about Molochians. Okay, Molochians are very ruthless. They're mafia style, so they can scare people, browbeat people into doing their bidding. And they have been using people with a Luciferian mindset to do their bidding over the past, thousands of years, as we marched through this low consciousness level, Kali Yuga. And they used the Luciferians to build the tools for them to dominate us. They used them to build the big tech, to build the AI, the Neuralink, the robots, the machines, the industry, if you will. I mean, they were using the Luciferian skills in order to dominate us, but the Luciferians couldn't take power because public consciousness was not at a level where Luciferians can be in charge. They were at a level where they were manipulable by Molochians. They were susceptible to fear mongering all the time. We all know this. We grew up with this. We know how normal it has become for us, or how normal we've been told it is, that there's so much evil in the world, and that the people at the top are cunning and evil and ruthless. And don't we all feel like that has changed? I mean, are we not noticing that there's a change in public consciousness to some extent? All the stuff that's going on right now, Doge posting all the government waste, and people publicly talking about the corruption of the LGBTQ plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever letter, number, or characters you want to add to that. Discussing controversial aspects of World War II, discussing, questioning the fundamentals of a bunch of things that we were indoctrinated and raised with throughout our lifetime. I mean, I'm a millennial, Gen Xers, probably similar situation. Gen Zers are, to them, this is probably, they're already ahead of us. This is why they're also more open-minded to things like cryptocurrency. By the way, cryptocurrency, also a very Luciferian phenomenon. Competitive monetary system, decentralization, all these trends that are occurring right now are not just you can't manage that top down, right? The public consciousness had to be ready for a new elite to take over, and so things that people at the top are doing are hitting differently now, right? The public reacts and and cares, reacts to and cares about different things now. So because you could, in the past, you could talk about, like, for example, let's say 20 years ago, you could talk about how, oh my god, the government is wasting money on something stupid. You could post it publicly, everyone would see it, and nobody would give a shit.
Right.
Now you have people in charge doing stuff, actually, and the public is perceptible and open to it. And I was just talking about, Dylan, I was talking about all kinds of other topics that the US, that were unthinkable to discuss, 20, 30 years ago. You'd be laughed out of the room if you talk about 9/11 being a false flag attack, the US never landed on the moon, whatever. The alien psyop is a bunch of bullshit. I guess people were down with that already. But actually, it's like a very boomer thing to believe in aliens, I think, still. It's like, people believe that there's something out there, whatever. But discussing, like I was just saying, talking about discussing controversial aspects of World War II, of American history, of race relations. Everything that has been so annoying to us now, all the DEI stuff and the race obsession of the left over all these years.
It was just assumed that nobody could do anything about it.
Right, and it was, the public consciousness wasn't ready to change that up. It was at a very low tier level of consciousness where this was all seemed reasonable to people. It's like, yeah, lock the whole population down indefinitely and inject them with risky experimental gene juice. Yeah, sure, let's go for it. But
Well,
this was also the tipping point, because with COVID, we saw it was the moment where the Molochians, where the non-Molochians saw the Molochians in their life come out of the woodwork, because there's no hiding anymore at that
you
point.
mean us as individual people, not as elites, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So exactly. I mean, everybody had, except me, and I had my reasons for this, but it's like everybody had a story in 2000, starting in 2016, but really hitting during this COVID stuff, right? Of like these people that I thought I knew were normal people turned into like these horrible demons.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't even say I supported Trump. I was just interested in talking about what he said, and then people
Yeah.
just like went for my jugular. And then in 2020, it's like, you're not wearing a mask. Get, dogpiling.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Tie him down. Tie him on the stretcher and fill up the syringe with this perfectly safe gene juice and inject it.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
I'm
you're totally
completely.
right. Where it really separated it. And on that note, I'm gonna make fun of somebody. I'm not gonna say a name. So my wife's friend started texting her this stuff because apparently this is a friend she's had for a long time. They're Japanese, and so there's like a small Japanese community wherever you go for Japanese people, right? They find these Facebook groups and connect with each other. But I mean, she knew this person from before, and this person or I should say, this person has started bringing up politics to my wife, which they never did in the past because they'd never been interested about it. They have full TDS, full fucking TDS, right? And so she starts sending my wife stuff about like, I'm really worried about Elon, something like Elon Musk getting banks shut down or bank accounts shut down, or
Shut the fuck up. You're not. You don't give a shit about that, by the way. You know,
yeah, yeah,
When-
yeah.
whenever people
Right.
talk, oh my god, some news outlet told them that somebody's doing something and they act like it affects them. It's like
Yeah,
shut.
well, here's the other one. I'm really worried about women's rights because
No, you're not. Shut the fuck up.
Trump's going to make it so
You
people are
have
going to
all
go
the
to
rights in the
jail
world.
over abortions, and in fact, he's going to make it so girls are going to go to jail over miscarriages. In fact, there's 2 girls in jail right now over miscarriages, and my wife's reading this to me.
And trans kids. I'm really worried about all these trans
Yeah,
kids.
my wife's reading this to me, and I'm like, wife, just don't even bother. I just leave it alone. There's nothing you can do. But what a perfect example of what you were just saying, right? Like this total fear, control, not looking at, like, I just eat what the TV feeds me, insanity. The people are still out there, but those people are they the minority yet? Have they become the minority? They're losing their grasp
They
of
are.
everything. Yeah.
Yes, they are. Uh, in the whether they're in the minority or not even necessarily that relevant, because the reasonable people are sufficiently large in numbers, and they control, and they have the skills, and they have the knowledge and the understanding and the strategies to defeat the other side. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a quantitative majority. It has to be
You're right.
a
Yeah, well,
relevant
and then
amount of
if the other
people.
side is at this level, right? Because this is something I've noticed and I mentioned, as particularly as we got through like the COVID thing, right? Is the level of ridiculousness of just flat out unbelievable dumb descriptions of reality that was coming out of the official narratives, right? Was just like going up exponentially. And it obviously was losing people because people who would otherwise would have listened to it are starting to step back, going, this is getting too crazy for me. But there's other people who are just like, I will die before I let go of this.
It's a
Right?
spiritual, yeah, it's a spiritual matter for them. They cannot, for the life of them. Just another thing, because you're just talking about your wife's not friend. I just saw some rally where some actress from Sex and the City, who's, I guess, married to. Let me get this right. Let me make sure. So she's.
You better get the celebrity relationships right, or there's going to be a problem, Nima.
I think she was Samantha. No, whatever she was in Sex and the City. I don't give a shit. She was the redhead, the ugliest one out of the whole group.
I
Which,
never watched it, so
even though there's a lot
whatever.
of material there, but she held a speech and she said, I'm speaking here as a wife of a trans man who has a trans kid, and the kid's best friend is trans." And it's like, dude, is everybody trans somehow? That's not reality. That's your little weird fantasy world that you. How many trans people do you run? How many trans people have you run into this week, Dylan, in your surroundings? I mean,
I don't know if I'm a good representative. I got
well,
my own
you're in
business.
Washington.
I have my own office, and I stay home at night because I have 3 kids, so I don't run into a lot of people. But your point is taken. 0.
I
Yes.
mean, these people live in a cringe theoretical world that has no practical application, and that mask has I mean, has come off now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
They're
they
just
could
full of
jump up
shit.
and down
You people
about
are
it.
full of
It
shit.
used to be, yeah, they could jump up and down about it and get support. But this is another thing I'm noticing, like with the Chuck Schumer rally and all this sort of stuff. There doesn't appear to be a lot of excitement behind him.
I mean, how do you get excited about this rat-faced, weird-looking Jewish mafioso stereotype from Central
We're
Casting and
gonna get
Church?
back the corruption. We're gonna turn the corruption back on. Who's with me? We're gonna stop Donald
Yeah,
Trump
right.
from stopping the corruption. Like what? What? Uh,
Right.
we're gonna win. Where the corruption's
Yeah.
gonna win.
Yeah. How long has he been in Senate? Like 100 years or something?
Yeah.
And complains about Doge pointing out major corruption in the
Which is
government.
probably he's probably getting money from USAID. I mean, wasn't that part
Of
of it?
course.
Like USAID gives it to NGOs, and NGO gives it to the PAC, and the PAC supports the whatever. I mean, just I am so excited to see whatever fallout there is from this USAID thing.
But yeah, so just to be clear, going back to so when we talked to Ian
Yes,
Ferguson that first time, he was saying things where that I couldn't believe. He said, and once the Luciferians do take charge, things are gonna go very quickly. The other side is not gonna understand what hit them, and they are going to start prosecuting people. They're going to start going after people. This was something that was completely unimaginable to us in 2023.
yeah, yeah. I remember thinking that. I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the prosecutions haven't happened yet, but the legals getting shipped out have. And
Well, I mean, they are now, they've just submitted the names of 5,000 FBI agents to the DOJ, of 5,000
oh,
FBI agents
I
who,
thought they just had to resign. Okay, great.
no,
Who are
well,
involved with with
J6
yes.
persecutions. They are Chuck Schumer, speaking of which, is being investigated for inciting murder against Brett Kavanaugh at some dumbass speech he held in front of the Supreme Court. Where do you know what he said back then?
Go kill the judge.
Well, no, he didn't say it, but he was standing there and he was saying, just because they wrote a legal ruling on abortion that he disagrees with, he was standing in front of a crowd in front of the Supreme Court and said, "Justices Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch, you have unleashed a whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you." I want Chuck Schumer to explain to me on the stand, under oath, or at least with public scrutiny, what did you mean by that? What did you mean by um, you will pay
You
the
won't know what
price?
hit you. Yeah, there's a whirlwind coming.
They're Supreme Court justices. How do you pay the price for a legal ruling as a Supreme Court justice? Uh, what do you mean we won't know what hit us? What are you talking about? Like, because if it's like a public official is elected, he may say, "Well, I was talking about there's going to be he's going to be voted out and he's going to lose really badly in some election or whatever."
Yeah,
What
I
are
mean
you
that's the point.
talking
The
about?
Supreme Court's pretty untouchable. It's not
What,
like once
so,
they're in
so
there, they're
what?
in there. Yeah.
So then, what are you talking about, right? So it's like a really shitty position for Schumer to be in if you're now actually being investigated for these threats. In my opinion, I would just love to see
Yeah, well, and then I'm also
what
wondering,
his
come midterm
excuses.
time, how much money was being thrown from USAID into Schumer and whoever else's campaign Are we going to see a significant fallout in the midterm across the board
Oh, by the way,
of these skeletons that suddenly don't
yeah,
have their money anymore?
you know what I'm also not seeing that we saw way too much of in 2016, 2017, 2018, Antifa protests. I mean, not just Antifa, but Antifa protests getting violent with Trump supporters. I
Right.
mean, Trump supporters were getting pummeled and beaten and killed, even to some extent. There
I
was some
remember, yeah, they
rally.
got shot here in Washington. Yeah.
Mhm. And in Berkeley, they were where I sorry, yeah, it was Berkeley. I was there for the Milo, just for a talk. It wasn't even anything. And they were throwing tear gas. They were bludgeoning people on the unconscious on the streets. Um, some of them suffering memory loss for a long time after that. Maybe some people even killed. I don't know. They probably. I don't trust the Berkeley College News, obviously, who glorified these riots and these attacks, this terrorism on the on Trump supporters and or Milo supporters. So we're not seeing that either, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that obviously Antifa is a cringe fed operation, you could say.
Right. But
They
I mean, well, the only reason Antifa was able to do it is because the cops stood down. Right. I mean, we've seen when law enforcement actually decides to be like, okay, you guys are done, it's just over. Like it just ends like that. Right. So I'm wondering how much law enforcement is. I mean, A, is Antifa even getting the orders to muster, or does it even have the energy to muster? And B, if it did, like, is the law enforcement at this point going, yeah, we're not doing that anymore, guys, we're done? No, but that's a good point. Is that the visceral, physical, riotous reaction that was both in at both elections, really, because we had the Summer of Love in was 2020 or 2021, and
Mhm.
the stuff happening leading up to
2020.
2016 and right
Summer of
after.
Summer of Love is another good example.
Yeah, all these
2020.
riots that happened, yeah, they're not happening right now. I mean, I understand we're seeing stuff about protests and they're calling for riots or whatever, but it's not the whole country burning like it was
Right.
last.
No, yeah, I mean, there's still, you have some states where there's still some cleanup to be done, such as California, obviously, where you had some immigration riots just now. But overall, it's much less than that. And you could feel how back then in 2016, 2017, 2018, the Trumpers were constantly getting their asses kicked. They were on the defense nonstop.
Yeah,
Now I can't even. I look at a Twitter feed. Oh yeah, Department of Education is being abolished. Oh yeah, the FBI people, the FBI J6 persecutors are being brought to justice. Oh, Chuck Schumer is being investigated. There's, I can guarantee you, there's a couple of other things that I'm forgetting right now.
well, just the J6ers getting pardoned in the first place.
The U.S. aid being shut down.
Yeah,
The J6ers blanket pardon for the political prisoners of January 6th. Absolutely unthinkable things. Russ Ulbricht pardoned. I guess that's a, you call it a
controversial.
bone. It's a bone thrown to the
Yeah,
libertarians in the crypto community, obviously, which is a large constituency now. So yeah, it's everything. I guess our main point ultimately is everything that Ian Ferguson was saying at a time when it was very unlikely is
based on what we could
happening,
see. Yes.
which bolsters his theory. And again, I'm not saying I'm not a Vedic, I'm not a Hindu Vedic, whatever. But so
These
let's
are
say,
two forms of consciousness, at least. I think we could say that. There's
right.
two
But let's
very
say,
distinct forms of
yeah,
consciousness here.
let's say you're a
we're talking
Christian.
about.
Let's say you look
Yeah.
at it from a Christian perspective. The, Moloch is in the Bible, or I guess he was called Baal in the Bible or whatever.
No, it's Moloch. It's Moloch.
Is
He
Moloch?
is a Baal. I think there's Baal, like the specific
Well,
god, and then all of them are balls.
Baal is a
Yeah.
lord, but there's also specific Baal that Moloch was also called, I guess, Baal. Baal. I forgot what it was. The Lord of Holes or something, Lord of Open Holes. um, but yeah, even from any perspective, there's some truth to be garnered. I also happen to believe that most religions of the world, right, they got some perspective of the revelation from God. They may not all have the perfect one and the correct one, but that doesn't mean that they're all completely off with their beliefs, right?
Hmm.
So I think there is some, and it's helpful. What Ian Ferguson told us gave us more hope for the future and made us more motivated, and it helped us consider what's happening right now instead of
Right. Well,
despairing.
in particular, let me. I remember having this conversation with you, like when Trump started pulling RFK and Tulsi Gabbard and all these supposed leftists into his circle. Was when I started going, okay, I started texting Ian going, okay, I'm starting to see I'm starting to see what you're saying here, because these are people that according to the traditional football rules are supposed to be on opposite sides, but we all know that those two sides are pretty much fake at the appropriate level, and now they're pulling themselves together, and these are all the people that, you know, maybe you agree with them or maybe you don't, or whatever, but you could at least say there's some goodness in each one of these people, even if they're doing other stuff that I don't like, as opposed to Chuck Schumer or Bill Gates or Klaus Schwab or Nancy Pelosi, where I'm like, I don't think there's a
Adam
damn thing
Schiff.
that you guys do that is good for anybody at all ever.
And oh, one thing I forgot to mention is what Ian Ferguson was saying. What was going on through the COVID years was that the Luciferians, whose genius was being used by the Molochians to implement the technology and all the things required to dominate people, they had started whispering into the ears of the Molochians to do really retarded shit.
Oh yeah, the stupid psyops. That's
Yeah,
right.
the
I remember
stupid
this.
ass to lock down the entire economy, to inject everyone with, to do things that are so unimaginably retarded that there is no other possible outcome than the population turning on these old rulers of the old world, basically. And you can also see that in your personal life, right? There's so many people have come, like you just said. Now the Republicans are promoting a Kennedy Democrat and another formerly Hawaiian former Democrat to be in the cabinet, not just as a bone thrown to anyone. No, they really want these people. They think that these are the right fucking people for that job.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. This is not Republican versus Democrat. This is common
It's for
sense
the right job. Yeah.
versus decrepit corruption. And I'm saying that because we're also, because we oftentimes hear, oh, both sides, blah 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 blah. No, not really. It's really it more seems to be that there's one side that's listening to the people, exposing corruption, and the other side talking at the people and trying to pull down the curtain back down on the corruption. We have Carlos joining us. Carlos, Project 2028. Here we come. Isn't Project 2028 this cringe boomer neocon project that was used to?
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up.
I think that was Project 20. Oh no, I think he's maybe using the notion of Project 2025, because this was so hilarious. Democrats during the election campaign started going nuts over this Project 2025 thing, right? It was
I remember.
obviously um, a psyop push to try to make Trump unpopular, at least in my opinion. And that's why Trump was also like, I don't even really know these people. It's kind of like, I mean, the Lincoln Project was anti-Trump, but another one of those groups trying to look pro-Trump, but at the same time trying to make him look bad. That's the sense I got from these people. And Trump himself also said, "Yeah, I don't even really know these people. They have some good ideas. They have some crazy ideas. I don't know." Um, Moloch has the head of a cow. The golden calf was Moloch.
I think that stands to reason.
The golden calf is, yeah, what the
The
Israelites
Israelites. Yep.
worshiping when Moses came down the mountain. It was like, what the fuck's going on? What are you doing? Um, yeah, a cow. And also, Ian says, for example, when he says Moloch, some people Moloch is what some people think of when they think of Satan, for example, the Satan from the Bible, right? Even though there's nothing, no real clarity on, okay, is there one person? Satan is just the Hebrew for the adversary, so it doesn't necessarily always have to refer to one specific entity, right? It's not a what do you call it, proper name versus
Proper noun.
proper noun versus a descriptor. I just read a book. What was Demons in the Bible is what it's called. He talks about there are some instances where Satan is used kind of like a name, but there are many instances where it's used in context. It clearly just means the adversary.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's Moloch. Moloch. Yeah, no, I mean I'm still amazed by how accurate Ian was with all that stuff that he told us back then.
I agree, and then I could only hope going forward that it just goes faster and faster and faster. I mean, I remember when Trump was signing those executive orders on the first day, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm just getting started with these. You just wait in the next few weeks." And can you pull up that tweet that you sent me last night, or maybe I'll race you to it. This guy.
For some reason, I'm not logged in on here. It's good.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Log
Let's see.
in. Why am I not logged in, by the way?
I believe it was this.
And my
Yes.
username.
All right. Let me put this here. I'll go like that, and then I will share my
Oh, maybe if I
screen.
do this, let's see.
No, I beat you to it.
Yeah, but just for later, it would be good for me.
Okay, so I don't know who Kale Zeldin is, but I mean, if this is true, this explains a lot. He says, I've spoken with people who were in the transition team in late 16 and 17, and they noted that they were completely blindsided by a furious and coordinated swarm they met. In quotes, we never found our footing. This is obviously referring to the Trump transition team coming in 2016. Then he says, the 24 and 25 transition is next level. It appears that the shoe is on the other foot. The blob was not at all ready for a motivated incoming transition team. Looks to me like they took notes, did an honest reckoning of their failures, and put together a genuine plan to get shit done. I've never observed anything like this. Fascinating time to be alive and paying attention. That's what you just said that Ian said.
Yeah.
And they're going to be caught with their pants down.
And exactly. And also, I mean, yeah, give credit to these brilliant advisors who prepared and everything. But the real credit goes to the Biden administration, the deep state, the COVID Nazis. Those are the people who made all of this. Without you guys, we couldn't have done this. Thank you so much for being such
Without you being
insufferable,
such pieces of
obvious
shit.
assholes out
Yes.
there. So, and that is once again along the lines of what Ian said. These people had Luciferians among them whispering in their ear to do really stupid shit. Carlos Rios, I missed a lot. I'll have to re-listen to this. I just came back to hearing about Trump being awesome and something about Moloch. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's a good summary.
How are the web leads coming along?
How are the what?
I chatted with him about his web design business. What else? What else is there?
I don't know. I was just looking at.
So I want to say because I keep so everything that happens in the U.S. Not everything, but a lot of things, a lot of big trends that you see in the US, you see them happen in Europe with approximately a 10-year delay or so. Right? So, oh, sorry, before I talk about that, actually, I want to say, I don't know if you remember, but in 2017 or 2018, or one of these years when the Trumpers were getting their asses kicked, I was talking to you and I was saying, still, everything they're doing, the left is doing, or everything that's being done by the regime, by the big techs, by all these assholes, I don't see how that is helping them in the long. They are going so above board, so overboard with their cringe that the only outcome ultimately can be to help the other side. And,
yeah, I mean, with the example I gave of my wife's friend, like they're so gone.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I also heard this talked about on Sam Tripoli's podcast. There is a historical phenomenon apparently that's called shining a leader, or shining someone up to become a leader, and you do that by making them into a hero. And is that not what has been done to Trump over the past years? Constant opposition from the most hated organizations in the world, assassination attempt, even, which was it real or wasn't it? I don't know, honestly. And rabid people in the streets attacking everyone who supports some policy they don't like, yelling at people without a mask in the store. Now, okay, so anyway, so huge credit goes to the other. I mean, running Kamala. I mean, come on,
Yeah,
dude.
that was
I'm almost like when they ran Biden. I almost wonder if they were like, "Dude, Biden is not. He's not going to win this election, right?" Um, Almost like they were hoping for him to lose because he was so incoherent. But then he won, and then they were like thinking, "Crap, we have to run somebody that's even more cringe than Biden." I mean, they could have run anyone, and they ran the most unpopular Democrat. Like she got like 2% in the
no, it was
primary
less than that.
regular.
It was
She
less
got
than
her
that.
ass, yeah,
Yeah.
one nothing. Got her ass kicked in one debate by Tulsi Gabbard and was basically gone from consideration. And then running her, really super cringe. And
Yeah.
so anyway, so everything happens in Europe, and especially I just know about Germany because that's where I grew up, born and raised, grew up. Um, and the exact same thing is going on with the AfD party over there. And I don't know if I have some, maybe I have some, I don't want to say unique insight, but there's just something to living in two different countries for this. By the way, my birthday is coming up in 2 days. I don't want to say, I'm not going to blurt out my age on here,
57.
but let's just say uh, 22.
Okay.
So I've lived in Germany for 11 years and I lived here for 11 years.
Sounds about right.
Um, and there's just something to certain patterns that you pick up that are universal, but you don't know they're universal if you only been in one country for all your life. Maybe you know it intellectually, but intuitively. Maybe I'm full of shit. I don't know. I
No,
mean,
no, I completely agree with you. Having lived in other countries, I know exactly what you're talking about.
so there's just phenomena that you see them happening in one country and you see them happening in the other country, but with a twist. So the superficial observer would not think to compare the two. But so you're seeing a lot of things happening in Germany now that are basically um, carbon copies of the Trump phenomenon here. But in
You're talking about the
Germany,
AFD, right?
yeah, the AfD. In Germany, and just conveniently tailored to the German system because you don't have the presidential system in Germany. You don't have a personality cult in Germany like you have in the US. So you couldn't have an exact thing like Trump going on in Germany. But you have the perfect reflection of what happened in the US, in Germany, in the form of the AfD party. And you have them rising slowly, kind of like Trump. Trump ran in 2008, and everyone laughed him out of the room, but he got some support. Then he ran in 2015, and then he won. And then it looked like he got his ass kicked, but now he won even harder. And now the entire MAGA movement was. So it's like a gradual process of shining a leader to become to be so maligned and so persecuted that they become so popular in the population. And the biggest opponents of that group don't get it. They are basically scammed into joining the pylon. And because they don't have this perspective of different countries, people in Germany don't even understand that what they're doing to the AfD, the attempts to ban this party in the name of so-called democracy, have made the party more popular. The activities of infiltrating and spying on the party officially on record, because they have political opinions that the regime doesn't like, has made them more popular. Everything that the other side is doing has made them more popular. And oh, by the way, the German regime funded demonstrations that have been going on in Germany. These cringe demonstrations with boomers walking through the streets with the same cookie cutter signs saying the same stupid slogans.
It was directly funded by the government. Well, I mean, I'm wondering if USAID is doing the same shit here.
Well, no, for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
So in Germany, it's to some extent funded. I can't pull up immediate evidence, right? But the German system is much more government influence in media and activism, much more institutionalized involvement of the government in media and activism. Certainly in left-wing states such as Hamburg, there are government promoted, at the very least, using taxpayer money and uh, um, then congressmen, left-wing congressmen and Greens and Reds, they would join the marches against a party who's not in power. Okay, you have a demonstration to support the regime that's fucking up your country against a party that has never been in power, bears no responsibility for your country's problems. That is so cringe. And by the way, if you
Nothing says you're a part of the resistance, like
Right.
taking government money to support the current regime.
to oppose to protest against the opposition.
Right.
By the way, if you ask AI about this, I've asked AI, is it a common phenomenon in a democracy for the government to fund anti-opposition protests? AI will tell you no. This is highly abnormal in a democracy. So my point is, Germany is not a democracy at the end of the day. But
Right.
In a so-called democracy, you cannot have government-funded protest marches against the opposition. That is so unfair. It's such an unfair advantage to use taxpayer resources to.
It is mind-boggling. Like, it's so unfair on its face. The fact that you even have to explicate it.
You're using the oppositions, because the opposition people also pay taxes. You're using their money to run against them, while the other side has to scramble and beg for money and get arrested for speaking out, get infiltrated, get their own allied publications and magazines shut down by the government. Not because they committed a crime, explicitly not because they committed a crime, but because they promote political ideas that the regime doesn't like. That happens in Venezuela, that happens in Cuba, maybe, that happens in Soviet Russia, maybe, that happens in North Korea, maybe. Then have an opposition there probably. But this is not supposed to be a thing in a democracy. And it's going to make the regime unpopular. It's going to make the opposition they're targeting more and more popular. There's so many things that they are doing. And this is so Molochian, right? Because Molochians are dull, dumb, and stupid. They have a hammer, and every problem is a nail. And they hit the problem with the hammer. It doesn't do anything. Well, we didn't hit it hard enough. Let's hit harder. And meanwhile, they're getting feedback in the form of poll numbers that are looking worse and worse and worse for
the hammer harder. Yeah, we have to hit the hammer harder because hitting the hammer's not working. Yeah, it's I've heard the LaRouchers say this. I don't even know if they still exist. He died so many years ago now, but I've heard the LaRouchers say this, which is that things are not getting worse. You're just starting to see them.
Yeah.
Right? And we're starting to see them, and because we're seeing them, they're getting fixed. I mean, I think this is another secret of Doge, right? Because a lot of the criticisms have come to it like, well, you're not actually a government authority. You don't have authority to do this. You're not actually going to save any money, and even if you did, it's not that much money in the whole grand scheme of things. But I mean, right from the beginning, remember when that omnibus budget thing was coming out before Trump took office, and it was 1,000 bazillion pages or whatever that nobody had read, and Musk just pointed attention at it, and the next day it was 116 pages, right? The purpose of Doge isn't to have governmental authority, and I keep bringing it up because it's a good example. It doesn't necessarily have to be Doge. The point that I'm trying to get at is there's power in just pointing something out.
Yeah, pointing something out in an environment of a public consciousness that is now receptible to what
Yeah.
you're pointing out, which wasn't
Yes.
the case before. And yeah, it's true. What to your point, so many. I mean, and we as millennials, I guess we're in a kind of unique position because we grew up in the old paradigm, and we're now understanding the new paradigm. But we're also seeing, you know, I guess not all of us, but a lot of us are like you and
Or
I are
see the
definitely
transition.
seeing the transition. But so for example, look at Hollywood. Hollywood was so popular, it was the thing, and oh my god, look, the Oscars and all that. Now everyone's like, ew, Hollywood's cringe, bunch of pedos, their films all suck, they all put their tranny propaganda in there.
And they
Ew, how,
preach to me all the time. Yeah.
and they lecture me, and exactly, they use their public pulpit to lecture about their political opinions, which are uneducated and idiotic. Oh my god, Roger De Niro, he was such a cool dude before. Now he was really just an idiot. I didn't know. I didn't realize. Thank you for showing. But Hollywood, and just watching this documentary about P Diddy, used to be called Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, who was the coolest shit in New York in the 90s and 2000s. And now it's not only that people are like less excited about him, but it's the opposite. He's going to jail. He's a creeper. He's a rapist. He's a criminal. He's a psycho. Yeah. He's an idiot. Oh my, I don't want to be that guy. There's so many. The heroes of the old days
The
are
Malachian
basically
heroes of the old days. Yeah.
they're being taken down. It's like a controlled demolition of the old paradigm.
I want to bring this up.
And yeah, like you said, it's not because things are changing. It's just the public consciousness has changed. People are seeing things differently now.
Comment from Carlos. Hollywood makes the same damn movie again and again.
Yeah, at this point, I mean,
I don't remember what movie I was watching with my wife. We turned it on. She wanted to watch this. It was Gladiator 2. That was it. That was a terrible movie. Oh my God, that was awful. So Gladiator 2 comes on, and right at the beginning, this is how I know whether or not I can potentially handle a movie. If I can predict the ending in the first 10 minutes of the goddamn movie, the movie's shit.
You should watch David Lynch movies then.
Okay, because Gladiator 2 is so terrible. And I can tell, like, you know, they spent 180, 200 million, whatever amount of crazy money they spent on this, and you got all these good actors and stuff, and the movie, it was just so bad. And then, like, the next day we watched Totoro with our kids, and we're like, this movie's so awesome. Right? Or I even watched Crocodile Dundee 2 the other day.
Right.
Yeah, and it was way better than the crap.
Yeah.
That they got coming out. Yeah.
So with Hollywood, yeah, part of it is, I think, so the Marvel movies and all that, they are like, I guess, the only money makers that Hollywood has left. That's possibly part of the reason why they're focusing on those now. They've basically burned all bridges, if you will, before that, and people just stopped enjoying their movies. But with the Marvel, you still have a young audience that's excitable, and you can market to. Also, obviously, maybe it's a way to, because it's kind of weird. Like Hollywood used to cater more to every segment, and now all they're doing is catering to children. basically, which of course makes perfect sense when you understand what a bunch of creepers and weirdos a lot of these people actually turned out to have been. And maybe it's also propaganda, a technique for them.
Well,
And
and then let's put our Carol Quigley hats on for a second. I also wonder how much of it is the institutionalization
absolutely
of the organization, where these people have all gotten old. They're still running. They think they're running on the same ideas that they're running on in the '80s, or that they have the same momentum that they had in the '80s, and they're the same people from the '80s, right? I mean, is
totally.
Steven Spielberg still pumping movies out? I don't even know, right? Like, how old is that guy
Mhm,
by now?
mhm. Yeah, totally
At,
tone deaf
at
to
what
the
point are these
public.
people just going to die off? Like, seriously, out of all these institutions all over the place, when's the current older generation going to die off, and there's no talent to replace them, and it just dies?
Right. And it's also, there's several things with Hollywood is an interesting case study because several factors, right? Like we've said before on our show, we go through it all. The world is becoming more decentralized. So a centralized movie system doesn't even make any sense anymore in the new world. And the public consciousness has changed. While Hollywood was the propaganda machinery for the old regime, explicitly a propaganda machine for the Department of Defense for the longest time, by the way. That was one of their big purposes in the beginning. Um, Also, obviously, anti Sovietism and actors, by the way, are very big in the intelligence community, have been explicitly. Jimmy Stewart was a spy. Marlene Dietrich was an official spy. Nowadays, Ben Affleck is affiliated with the CIA. Jennifer Garner, as far as I know, she does ads for CIA and FBI. And so it's just it's been a phenomenon of the old regime, so it makes perfect sense. Now the world's becoming more decentralized. You can shoot movies anywhere. Special effects are better-ish, even though that's been something. One thing I noticed actually, there was a time during the recent decade or so where special effects actually got worse because everyone just started using digital effects for everything. And I talked to our friend David Cole about that. He said, yeah, they have actually begun doing live action. What do you call it? I think called live action effects. So, like for example, if you watch the first Aliens or Alien and Aliens as well, if you watch that movie, the aliens are not a lot of digital. So they had to build these things. They had to
Yeah.
build the xenomorph, and there was a lot of effort and work and love to some extent that went into creating these ugly creatures. Then some of the early 2000s alien movies, um, practical effects, thanks God. S- s- some of these earlier Alien versus Predator, they started using digital effects for the alien, and you can just tell it just started looking very cringe. And so they actually went back to doing more real effects because they noticed there's certain things, certain aspects of real practical effects, live action that you just they can't do it digitally. It looks
Mhm.
the movements look too smooth somehow with the digital animations. Which
Yep.
makes me wonder, are they ever going to figure that out? Are they ever going to be able to make digital look credible and realistic? Which in turn makes me wonder, what about the move from analog records to digital CDs?
Yeah, we talked about that before, right? What was lost?
Yeah, a lot of subtleties get lost in digital technology.
Well, and then I mean, analog records to digital CDs is one thing. At least the digital CDs are still pretty good quality. The fact that everything we listen to now, we're just have my phone play it. Hey phone, play this. Hey phone, play that. My kids are just like, "Can we listen to a song? Can we listen to a song?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna buy you a CD player, so you get to have a list of CDs, and that's what you get." Right? You got to
Yeah,
pick a song from the CDs that you have, as opposed to being able to access anything on Earth,
yeah,
period, anytime you want.
yeah. I hate that too. The fact that, but at the same time, it's just it's
Yeah,
just a new technology.
it's not
But
me. You
because
win. You win.
yeah,
Ah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because it used to be there's a sense of ownership and a sense of joy that you buy a CD that you've been looking forward. Finally, I have it. I can put it
Yep.
in my CD player and listen to it. A movie, you bought a movie that you can't wait to see. this is all available at the click of a button nowadays, and so that preciousness and rarity aspect of it is getting lost. I think NFTs and ordinals and crypto are trying to bring that back to the digital world, but it's still digital. At least you have a sense of uniqueness and ownership, but it's digital, it's artificial, it's not a physical item anymore.
I don't know how we got distracted onto this thing. I mean, this is more of like kind of the culture change that's, an inevitable when technology changes. I mean, at some point here, we're just going to be gripey old timers,
Right.
right? I mean, I try to explain it to my kids, um, but I will say I have noticed. I mean, maybe this is an interesting thing to talk about is that on one hand, I do prefer being able to listen to whatever I want whenever I want to. Uh, but when I look at my kids, if they don't like something in 2 seconds, they're like, I want a different song. I want a different video.
Yeah,
I
the
want a different
attention
song. I want a different
span.
video. Yeah, where it's like, just, you
Keep
don't
talking,
even,
I'll come back.
yeah, you don't even know what's going on yet. Just like sit back and digest it. And I mean, I'm even to the point where my kids don't like movies. Me and my wife are just like, our kids don't like movies. What's going on here? And I think the idea is the idea that you're going to sit back and commit yourself to 2 hours of something.
Yeah.
They just don't know what to do with that.
So I just want to say something that what I find really cool is I got some presents recently. Okay. This is
Pretty
a
cool.
record, Pink Floyd The Wall. My sister-in-law got it for me.
You got the
And
record player.
and I got a record player.
How much better is it?
I mean, it has a Bluetooth hookup, okay, but it's a record player. It
Yeah.
plays the record, and also I got a bunch of other records. But I was just thinking to myself, how cool is that? Because technically, I didn't even grow up with records, right? I grew up with cassettes. We still had some records when parents had them, whatever. But to me, it was already like old school.
Yeah, I didn't touch that antique.
But I started using tapes and then CDs. And how cool is that? That I'm now going back to records, and I like it. I enjoy it. I appreciate that. Having a record player, putting the record on.
I think it's
I don't
great.
know what. I don't know if that means
I'd like to
anything.
do the same thing if I wasn't moving. I got to get rid of all my stuff. Nima, you want to come buy all my stuff in my house? Or take it to the dump. It's gonna end up at the dump. I throw everything away. No, I mean, we've kind of led out of the political thing. We're talking about cultural stuff, and like I said, it's kind of inevitable cultural stuff. But I mean, it's interesting to think about where it's like, okay, how can we be actively aware of what we're losing when we move into new technology? And
By the way, breaking news. Attorney General Pam Bondi directs Department of Justice to freeze all federal funding for sanctuary cities.
Nima,
I'm tired of winning.
We might be approaching too much winning.
Yeah, I'm now officially tired of winning. How do we stop it?
I can hear Seattle crying from here, Nima, like the shriek of Seattle. Ah! I love it.
Music to my ears.
Music to my ears. Music to my ears. Portland too. I drive through Portland on a regular basis. Just what are they gonna do? It's Christmas in February. That's right, Carlos.
Just to open up a tiny related topic, religion, right? You're also seeing.
The push to orthodoxy.
Right. So it seems like. I mean, I haven't looked at quantifiable figures on this or whatever, but yeah, it seems to be like orthodoxy is kind of booming, and Orthodox Christianity is kind of booming, and the other so-called
the foundations of America religion are dying.
And similar situation. Everyone sees how cringe they are now. I mean, to me, a lot of them were like the evangelical,
me, yeah.
the evangelical boomer type Christianity has always been very cringe to me. But I'm just saying because we keep getting comments from people on our Orthodox on your interview with
Dr. Porku.
Dr. Porku. Uh, Catholicism has had a massive advantage of the sort, political backing. Wherever Spain or Portugal went, it created a channel for the spread of Catholic. So a lot of people a lot of Catholics defend Catholicism because of the power that they've amassed in the figure of the Pope
Well,
and centralization.
it's justification through ends. The ends
Right,
justifies
right.
the means, right? Like, look, we've accomplished the most, so therefore we must be the best.
And also because we have one dude who we all who's infallible, who we all have to listen to, that's somehow progress. So we have an advantage through that
Yeah.
because one dude decrees centrally. And then the problem with that, I guess for some reason don't understand the problems of centralization. When that centralized node becomes captured, then a bunch
They get
of
a centralized
a
problem.
bunch of anti-Christian bullshit is suddenly trickled down to everyone in your amazing, total clarity providing Catholic community. Now you have suddenly have LGBTQ beginning to get pushed by some of your priests. Now you have clown masses all of a sudden. Now you're beginning to open up to abortion in some areas. All these things. So this is where I think orthodoxy has reflects, and maybe also decentralization is generally a more preferable management system, and orthodoxy reflects that more. And so in orthodoxy, you don't have this challenge of, okay, wait, we have one corrupt dude who's like rampaging through the faith like a drunken elephant in a glass house. It's much more hyper. What do you call it? Hyper fragility, anti fragility, right? So
There we
anti
go.
fragile.
I was going to say, he's talking about the Pope here.
Yeah.
Wait, no. Yeah, I and the fact that I mean, I think if you look at the arguments, the Orthodox make the best argument that they are the closest thing connected to the original faith. Right? I just don't know. I just can't see how you can make an argument against it, even if you're a Roman Catholic and you say, hey, we're the Pope, and Peter was the first Pope, and we're the direct line from that, so we go right back from the beginning. And okay, yeah, that's cool. But if you
Yeah, but where does it say that that means he
no,
has to,
just take it for granted for a second. Even if
Mhm.
that's true, how come after the schism, all the stuff, the liturgical rites, and basically the way that the church does things suddenly started changing radically in the West, whereas before the schism, the West did it the same way as the East. And you could say, well, the Pope has the prerogative or whatever, but that wasn't my point. My point was if the Orthodox Church has the greater claim to fame of doing things today the same way they were done on day one, even if the Pope is right, right?
plus
He's changed stuff.
yeah. Uh, but he wasn't. Was there even a pope before 1000 BC?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's this is where is the noun proper or not,
Right. I mean,
right?
what's what is the
Pope
word
just means papa, which is the same as patriarch. So he's the patriarch of Rome.
of Rome? Yeah, but
Yeah.
why all of a sudden of all Christianity? Where how did that happen?
Oh,
How did
yeah.
that
I mean, that's the
Well,
the
the
problem,
Catholics
right?
have some argument that because even the Orthodox acknowledge that, yeah, the Bishop of Rome, it, I mean, other bishops are not the Bishop of Rome, and the Bishop of Rome has a certain
Authority
position
over his
as the
bishopric.
first
Yes.
bishop over his, and also even among the bishops, maybe he is a little different than the other bishops. That still doesn't mean that he's infallible and that he has power over all the other
Right.
bishoprics, right? And also, um, I mean, obviously, you know more about this. Peter was, um, Jesus gave Peter this,
On this rock I will build my church. Rock
right,
being a pun for Peter. right?
Well, yeah,
Not like a joke pun. I mean, like he's like
Petros,
double
Petros,
emphasizing you are the Rock, right? Because your name
yeah.
means rock. Yeah.
Hmm.
But again, like you said, what does that mean? Does that mean that we have this guy who's now infallible? And I mean, one of the things that really gets it for me is that the Roman Catholics, they just, I feel like they spend so much of their effort defending the Pope, as opposed to spending so much of their effort going, well, here's how you get in relationship with God. Here's how you get in your relationship with Jesus.
And that's what
And I feel like
happened.
the Orthodox are more focused on that, and the Roman
Yeah, because
Catholics are just too busy trying to figure out how to make the Pope the king.
yeah, how to Pope explain, how to justify all the cringe. Right?
Yeah,
The Orthodox don't have the challenge of having to justify a bunch of ridiculous cringe that's coming from a captured, centralized authority, I guess. Yeah, no, the Orthodox, you don't even hear them ever care much about or talk about their patriarch or their bishops necessarily, because they don't. Yeah, they don't have to defend
yeah, and they're not. None of them are infallible, right? And
that too. Yeah.
and I mean, this to me is intuitive, which is according to the tradition where the Pope isn't God. Um, the in order to change anything in the religion, all the patriarchs have to come together, and you have to have a unanimous agreement. That's like saying we're going to have Congress come together, and the only way anything can pass is if 100% of them agree on on it. That is like effing impossible. Not literally,
Yeah.
but almost, right? And just that fact alone is going to really make it very, very, very difficult for anything to change. In contrast, if you put all authority in one person, you go to the president and say, hey, Mr. President, you now have all authority of legislative power. You can do whatever you want at any time, change any law, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
Obviously, in that sort of situation, the laws are going to change like crazy.
This is the power of Bitcoin too. You have thousands of nodes all over the world, and miners all over the world. You don't rely on one node, so you would have to change all of those nodes to corrupt and destroy Bitcoin, which is physically and even theoretically impossible.
Right.
Because somebody can still keep a backup of the old blockchain, spin up 1, 2 new nodes, and it's kind of yeah. I mean, I don't know if I agree with your characterization of the Orthodox.
Well, let me just finish my point here.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I'm not even looking at who's got a justification, who's got the appropriate justification. I'm just looking at if you have a structure that's legislative versus a structure
Yeah.
that's executive, all in one person. Like, I don't even need to know the details. I know that the power vested in one person is going to go crazy with power and change everything really quickly, versus the one that's legislative is going to be slow and deliberate.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, I mean, also, I don't even think in Orthodox you ever have that situation where all these different bishops come together, or
Well, you only
even
have it
bunch
at a
of
council, and the only person who's ever been able to call a council is the emperor, and that hasn't been able to happen since the Muslims took Constantinople. No one has the authority to call a council right now.
Right. So then you
Or at
have
least that's what some Orthodox people have told me.
so that delegates it to the individual bishops. Maybe those bishops, if they manage to come together and collude, but like you said, that's an unlikely thing to happen. The more bishops you want to get together and agree on one thing, the less and less likely to happen.
Exactly.
That makes the system anti-fragile.
That's my point. And then because that's the situation, I think it's intuitively obvious that the Orthodox are going to be doing things very more similar to day one of Christianity, then the Roman Catholics are going to be doing things it's similar to day one in Christianity, regardless of the arguments of whether the Pope is the king of the whole thing or not. Right now, I think it lends to the fact that the Orthodox are making a better argument. But again, even if you step back from that, clearly the Orthodox are going to have the better argument for we're doing things more closely than anybody else to the way that they were originally done.
Yeah, I think that's a hard thing to argue against.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean,
so, go ahead.
it's a hard thing to argue that either the Protestants or the Catholics are doing anything like the way it would have been done in in year 100, year 200. It's
Oh,
just
sorry.
yeah,
You
yeah.
say it again. I got distracted by Carlos's comment here.
Yeah, well, I was just saying, like, it's hard to make the case that the Protestants or the Catholics are doing anything that their tenets are reflected in the first 300 years of Christianity.
Yes, I agree. So Carlos says, this is interesting. Hey guys, the interesting thing is when you look at the mainline Protestant denominations and how they had a similar approach, yet
Yeah,
failed miserably. They
yeah,
split into oblivion, whereas the
yeah,
Orthodox didn't. I know exactly why.
yeah. I think okay, I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
I think it's because of the sola scriptura and the complete um, discarding of the tradition, basically.
Yeah.
Because there's a giant tradition of tomes that have been written, very complicated debates over thousands of years. I mean, that's something that doesn't even exist in science. And the Protestants just discarded all that. And now everyone can do that. This is why the Protestants are even worse with the LGBTQ crap. I mean, you can find a
Because you can just go
Protestant.
start your own church.
Yeah,
I'm now the LGBTQ church.
yeah. I mean, you could probably have a Satanist church make the case that they're actually
Yeah.
a Christian Protestant church. So yeah,
Well,
it's like the Protestants have the extreme one side of things. It's like complete decentralization, discarding of all tradition, and the Catholics have discarding of some tradition and total centralization under one authority. And the Orthodox are sort of striking the balance, in my opinion, between those
and
two.
then I want to take what you said even further about the Protestants because you said the issue sola scriptura. And I completely agree. And to zoom in on that, what sola scriptura means is I get to interpret the Bible. Well, first of all, there's this assumption that the Bible is like this perfect description of all reality. Everything you need to
Yeah.
know is in there. It's perfectly put together. It was created by God. It fell out of the sky, and and it's
Which-
written in a vernacular specific to you. So the way you think it's talking to you is the way that it's written, as opposed to being written to the people at the time that each of the individual books were written. And I personally get to interpret that. Well, that's just subjectivism. That's just solipsism. And so, because anybody could go into there, pick up this book, this isn't a book, but and say, hey, I've interpreted the truth. The truth is X. Well, because the fundamental premise is I get to interpret the truth, Nima can pick up the book and go, well, I interpret it this way. And there's no way to reconcile the difference in the
And
exact same way if we're both relativists, if we're both subjectivists. There's no way to reconcile our differences except through violence.
but by the way, they're weirdly like completely subjectivist, completely relativist, but in a roundabout way, they are completely worshiping the infallibility of one person, the person of Luther, who picked the correct Bible somehow as a fallible human being. And that thing that Luther picked is the correct Bible to worship and
Right.
to
Well,
read out of.
it's like
Why? Well,
this
where does it say
castle.
that? So then where does it say in your Bible that you have to go with the canon as determined by a dude named Martin Luther in Wittenberg, Germany, 1500, whatever?
Right. Well, what's interesting about what you just said is there's this castle of objectivity. resting on this foundation of subjectivity. So unless you point it out, someone points it out like I just did, you think, well, it's objective. I mean, I grew up in a Lutheran setting, right? And it
Me,
was everything
me
was
too.
communicated to me like it was objective.
Me
Everything
too.
was
Yeah.
shown to me like everything here is based on objective stuff. But you've got to dive into it to say, okay, wait a minute, this is resting on a subjective foundation. And like Carlos just said, they just splinter into oblivion because there is no way to reconcile a difference of opinion. Versus if you've got the orthodox, in quotes, tradition. I don't even know if tradition's like an appropriate word, because at one level, tradition just means we're doing it today because we did it yesterday. It's more to it than that, right?
I think it's the way that Orthodox scholars talk about it. So I think it's nothing wrong with saying tradition.
Well, what I'm saying, that's not the only component. There's another component, which is that there's Jay Dyer likes to say it this way. There's a normative authority, right?
Yeah.
There's someone who is been trained in the appropriate way, that there's a line going straight back to the beginning of these people being trained in the appropriate way of how to understand this, and those are the people that you need to go to communicate how to understand this correctly. If you disconnect from that normative authority, you have just jumped into solipsism. You have just jumped into relativism, and there's no other way. There's no other way to break it down. You're either with the people who know how to do it right, or you're in the vast ocean of subjectivism.
Yeah, I guess there's two different ways to take down a system, right? There's like the central hyper centralization, and you take over the central node, or you splinter the system apart completely and take away all the safeguards that the tradition used to grant them. Two different
Yeah.
infiltration mechanisms, I guess.
Yeah, and then I mean, just bringing back why we even brought this up to begin with was just we were talking about music, right, and CDs and records and stuff, and the various effects that new technology has. And I gave the example of my kids, of their attention span in terms of digesting something is just so short. I mean, the boomers made fun of us for having short attention spans, right? And I'm looking at my kids going, "Oh my God, you have
Right.
short attention spans," and saying, okay, look, well, even Nima's buying records. I'm interested in buying records because we want to shift back to, okay, slow down. Let's digest this in the fashion that it was supposed to be digested. And then you brought up religion in this case of there. That's another example of the culture at some level. Again, I don't know how many numbers, like you just said, how many raw numbers we're working with here. There does seem to be a cultural shift toward, okay, let's stop for a second and see if we can go back to the original source here, and let's start digesting that original source, because I think we're losing something in this rapid path that we're taking in whatever direction that we're going. And I think that was a great example that you brought up about the religion as well, is the splintering into oblivion of the Protestant sects is I mean, it's just so real and obvious. And Nima, tell me if you haven't noticed this. I'm starting to see a lot of churches that are chains, and they have logos, and I don't know if they have marketing. It looks like they have marketing based on their logos. Our church is called The Pursuit. Our church is called Life with a Y, or something like that. And they got some weird logo that goes along with that. And I see them all around over here, and I'm always scratching my head going, I'm like, I thought the only logo for a church should be a cross, right? And like you're marketing your churches like it's Starbucks. I mean, like, what is this? And who is this attracting? And you talk to some of these people and they're like, oh, we're non-denominational. I don't even know what that means, Nima. What does that mean? I'm non-denominational. We're non-denominational, and this is about, we want to feel good. You're going to run a religion on feeling good? I wonder how long the Starbucks logo churches are going to last. I can't imagine very long. There's obviously an industry in it right now, but
Non-denominational is just Protestant. You know, when somebody tells me they're non-denominational, then I just tell them, "Oh, you mean Protestant?"
yeah, that's
And what else is it? I mean, but like also, for example, I'm just looking at some pictures of some Baptist churches,
hallelujah.
and they don't even have the cross. I mean, some of them at least they just have a spike on top, or maybe it's a tiny cross. I don't know.
And then
Like for
they can
example, what about
preach
this?
about the rapture.
I guess they have a tiny cross somewhere up there. I guess. Hmm.
Nima, I'm starting to peter out over here.
Yeah.
Good.
Very,
What's
very
that?
appropriate. Yeah. Peter. We were just talking about Peter.
Oh, that's right.
Peter. Peter. Nice pun.
Thank you. So, I guess just to kind of wrap this up, we started off. I mean, we covered not everything, but a wide swath of tariffs and Doge and Lucifer and Moloch and religion and budgets and deficits and all sorts of good stuff. So, we'll be cutting this up and getting it up on the various not streams but video hosting sites, and check us out for more. Check us out at iridatv.tv. Find us on YouTube, Irida TV, BitChute, Rumble, Odyssey. And if you like this sort of stuff, send us comments. Catch us on the live. We love chatting. And our favorite thing is if you've got some economic chip on your shoulder that you want to fight with us about, we absolutely love that. So please send that our way. And in the meantime, we appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.